Mental Dialogue Black Level presents 3 the Smart Way as we discuss business and finance for the culture, featuring serial entrepreneur William Agnew, trader and investor Michael Suttlar, and hosted by yours truly, mental activist Montoya Smith. Catch us live or subscribe for replays on the Mental Dialogue YouTube channel. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates, and welcome to 3 the Smart Way. Right now, we're 2/3 the Smart Way as I got on my brother William Agnew.
What up, what up?
Yeah, 2 parts of this 3 the Smart Way. So hopefully our brother Michael will get on with us soon, but we pop up live. So do you hear any feedback on your end, brother? I just
No, I'm good. You sound wonderfully clear.
All right, cool. Just wanted to, hopefully our brother Michael can get in here. If not, sometimes we may have to handle this thing 2/3, but it is 3 the Smart Way, business and finance for the culture. And you are our business leg, if you will. And so if you will, we're just going to do a quick background and just jump right in. This may be a quick and short one. I think it's going to be a dynamic one, regardless of how long it goes, if you will. But again, for anybody out there, this is business and finance for the culture. And we just do quick pop-up shows and just kind of give an unapologetically Black view on different issues that our community, I would say, maybe, I don't know if it's necessarily that we should be having these conversations, but it's conversations that you typically don't hear from our viewpoint. So with that said, William, I know you've been a serial entrepreneur. So if you don't mind, give me the name of your company and how long you've been in business, and we're going to jump right into this conversation.
I've been in business for about 15, 16 years, since 2009. I always say this, and I'm going to tell you knows, I left the plantation or the corporation about 16 years ago, and I've never looked back. Thankfully, God's been good to me. Never had to really look back. Been a lot of learnings, very valuable learnings. Some of them actually cost me money, right? But when I look at the fact that I learned from the experiences and what not to do and what to do, and losing money, it's been a value. Also, so just thankfully, I've been able to take a lot of what I've learned over the years,
Absolutely,
and really apply that and be successful. So yeah.
So that's why you are our business expert, if you will. But you always forget to give yourself shine. So if you don't mind, tell them the name of 1 or 2 of your businesses so that people know again, just what you actually do. Because versus just saying you're in business.
Well, most recently, I'm gonna give you the one I'm most recently doing, and I'm capitalizing on exactly what you're talking about. So the most recent business is a business called OctaneMarketingServices.com, and really we specialize in taking companies from millions, right? You got to be doing at least $1 million in revenue for us to work with you. And what we do is we come in, we consult with you and help you figure out how to get to whatever your goal is. Usually for companies that do at least $1 million or 10 million, it's coming in and understanding what you're missing, whether that's products, whether that's services, how you're doing it, how you're recruiting, and helping you fill that gap on the front end, maybe even internally to generate that money and get to your goal. We've been working with a lot of guys who want to exit in the next 3 to 5 years in whatever they're doing. And so obviously people want to exit at the highest multiplier as possible. So what we do at Octane Marketing Services is we come in and help you with that, right? And so it's a pretty healthy investment. But at the end of the day, the idea is to get the return on that exit. And that's what we strive to do. So that's my most recent business.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that one. You know what I mean? So I'm glad to hear you introduce it on 3 the Smart Way. But with that said, again, we want to talk about business and finance. So absolutely, you are our business expert, if you will. And so the discussion that we wanted to talk about was the U.S. economy. And I would say that it, from my viewpoint, just doing a little research, preparing for the show, I would say surprisingly strong compared to what we're consistently hearing in the media and just even people's real life experience, because what everybody is feeling is the effects of inflation over the last 3-4 years, right? And so
100%.
so the inflation and the complaints and the dialogues, and clearly just I remember just initially just a couple years ago, less than a couple years ago, just being able to walk out the grocery store with a whole lot more with $100 than I can walk out the store now. You know what I mean? So that had to change for me. And so when I was doing the research, finding out that the U.S. economy to a degree is relatively strong in comparison to the rest of the world. Maybe that's one way of looking at it. But it surprised me to even find that info. Again, I know I sent you an article as well. I don't know if there's anything you want to highlight, but what's your take on what you saw from that perspective that the economy is strong? And I'll give some numbers here soon, but I just want to kind of get your initial thoughts before I share some of the numbers that show how strong our economy actually is, despite what you may be hearing in the media. Go ahead, bro.
Well, despite what you're hearing in the media, it depends on, it's all about perception and your where you're looking at it from. So you have to understand who's writing and from what perspective or perception they're writing it from. And I say that because a lot of times what you'll see, kind of what you sent me, they talked about the global marketplace versus the domestic marketplace. And there's a big difference in that. A lot of it just depends on what community you're actually in and what news you're actually listening to. So if you're listening to it from a global perspective, the insight, the idea, and the outlook is going to be different in terms of the global market, financial market, and economy market versus the domestic, which would be, the United States for most people watching. So if you're looking at what's going on in the United States, it's not going to be a good comparison to what's happening globally. So you really got to take in consideration when you say growth is happening, or when you say cutbacks are happening, or when you say the economy is struggling versus the economy doing well. It's really what perspective you're looking at it from. Are you looking at the global marketplace, right? Because that can have different ideas about what it's doing and the health of it versus the domestic marketplace. Right. So you got to take those things into consideration.
So I'll share with you. So I looked at the domestic numbers and was surprised once again. So and I'll share some of these numbers, and obviously you can just give your thoughts. So and again, you're literally in the business marketplace. So again, I'm just looking at data, from an aggregate, if you will. And so, definitely respect if maybe even your personal experience is different than this. But I saw, surprisingly, during the research of this week, consistency in what, for example, the article which was talking about on the global. So let's start with those numbers, and then I'll tell you the numbers that I haven't shown you that I found domestically that shocked me, considering what I'm hearing in the media every day about our economy. But let's start with the global numbers initially, which basically global growth is at 2.6%. We were projected to be at 2.4, if you will. So we're actually talking about the U.S. economy specifically. Actually the global growth, of all the global growth is up 2.6%. It was expected to be at 2.4, but the lone wolf in driving that has been the U.S. economy, because the rest of the world, and again, even though we may, to agree, because of inflation, we may not understand this conceptually, but based on the rest of the world, their economies are not growing. U.S. growth has been so strong that it's holding up the world. Obviously, we're the number one economy in the world, so obviously we're going to be a biggest factor in that number, if you will. But unexpectedly, the U.S. economy is kind of been the lone wolf. I don't know if you recall when we had the conversation on DEI last time. Hope Bryant mentioned that when on his actual Breakfast Club interview, the idea that we are the only economy that's growing right now. I was shocked to hear him say it, but then to go ahead and kind of look up these numbers this week and be like, wow, you would be surprised to know that our economy is growing on a global scale, if you will. Right now, believe it or not, inflation is at a 3-year low currently, but again, we shot so high up, right, that hearing that is, seeing that is at a 3-year low is surprising, because at the same, like I said, I just talked about those groceries. I don't feel like the cart has a little more in it, just, you know what I mean? Just from a couple of years ago. So personally, I'm not necessarily seeing that way, but the overall factors is that it's slow, but here it is. It got as high as 9%. So to be now slowed down to 3%, which is still an increase, right? From what we recall pre-pandemic. So we're still feeling the increase, but it's slowed as far as how fast it was going up. You know what I mean? And
Right.
then even to put that in perspective of this administration, because when you start talking about these economics, people automatically connect it to the politics or whatever. And so inflation up overall is still up 19%. So again, we're feeling it. I'm not even trying to change the numbers, or I'm not giving a political slant, if you will. I'm trying to report the numbers as is, and we're at a 3-year low in reference to how it gotten, but we're still feeling it at 19%. So I'm trying to, I like to give numbers in the best context. That's my goal, because I'm not trying to slant the numbers one way or another. I try to give as much full context. So
100%.
Yeah, so to a degree, just the economy overall, again, 2.6 growth, higher than expected, being held up specifically by the U.S. Any thoughts on that? And then I'll give you a couple of specific U.S. numbers that surprised me as well, because again, I think the numbers I'm about to give makes it consistent with global growth. Go ahead.
Well, I think, one thing the U.S. has always led in is the development of new technology.
Okay.
And we are definitely in a space right now, as everybody can see, where technology is literally changing overnight. It's moving so fast. There's this thing called Moore's Law, right, that some of you guys may be familiar with. We're blowing that out of the water in terms of the speed at which technology is being created. Some of you guys are familiar with NVIDIA. I think it's NVIDIA, where they've shown some of the technology that they have and the capability of CPUs and GPUs and supercomputers, and we got the goggles from Apple that came out, and everybody's kind of buying into this entrepreneurial spirit where we have technology with AI that can do this and do that. And so the excitement around the possibilities of efficiency and productivity and the possibilities of what can be done here in America is very different than the rest of the world, right? And that's because we lead in the development of technology. I think with that being said, there's still a lot of investment going on in that, because this is where, honestly speaking, if you look at it from a historical perspective, this is where a lot of the money is made. It's in times like this. So regardless of whether you feel like we're in this slowdown and inflation is through the roof and the cost of things are expensive, a lot of times the offset of that is the excitement around what the possibilities are across the next 3 to 5 years in terms of efficiency, money making, productivity, new technology, new products, new services. And we're at this point where everybody's excited about those possibilities. So people are still spending money, whether that's the corporation, even the consumer is still bought into that. Obviously, we're going into an election in the next 4 months too. So some of that plays in. Elections typically, historically, always have, they want to make sure that the economy is doing relatively good, at least how it seems in an election year, just to get people to participate. So I think you got a lot of those kind of dynamics going on here in the United States versus the rest of the world. Obviously, the rest of the world, technology is not really being integrated or implemented at the speed at which it's being done here in the United States. It's not being marketed that way. So some of that would be the differentiation. But I think here in the United States, that's why you're seeing a lot of the numbers, guys. Companies are still investing, and at this point, everybody's trying to win. Everybody's trying to be the one spot, the number one spot, or the number two spot with all of the opportunity that's coming on. So a lot of that money is still being invested. A lot of money is still being borrowed, so to speak. So even at the consumer level, a lot of people are still running up those cards and those credit cards.
Absolutely.
And stuff.
So that actually speaks to what's actually going on. Again, when I looked up these numbers, to my surprise, because you said going into the election year, in a sense, they want to, make it seem or whatever if they can. But it's actually the reality, because prior to me looking up the numbers, I still bought into, I guess, the feeling of what I experienced during the pandemic when there was a lot of jobs lost.
Right.
40% of African-American businesses went out or whatever. And you go down certain blocks here in Atlanta where there's plenty of businesses, and they're different businesses. They're not the same businesses that I saw just 3 years ago. So I'm still coming off that remnants. Plus the media is being honest is scaring you into things are bad again. But my number one factor that me personally is using that prices are still high.
Yeah.
But the reality is, here's the reality: job creation. I looked this up. I'm actually meant to have the numbers with this for this, the actual numbers. So people have to go look up what I'm saying. I want to bring the numbers so people will not think I'm just making this up. But job creation in the last 3 quarters, January, February, March, it has been the most since 2014. Like, so job creation is the most in the last 3, because they look at it in quarters, if you will. So when I was looking at looking at the research, just showing or whatever. So the biggest job creation since 2014, which is actually consistent with job creation last year. It's just higher this year. So there are more jobs being created than ever before. I mean, well, I should say ever before, since 2014, to be consistent with the information. Then also, to your point, I saw Colin Cowherd, if you're familiar with him, one of my favorite sports hosts or whatever. He just like a week ago said, just kind of decided to kind of go on a side note on his own show saying, I'm not sure I'm living in the economy that I'm hearing on TV. Because he goes, all the games, he's obviously coming from a sports perspective, but all the games are full. Everybody's spending their money, and in the neighborhoods that I visit, and he visits around the world, around the country, if you will. Here's another thing: crime has went down in the last year and a half, where it has spiked a 30% spike right after the pandemic. Right, it was a 30% spike, which is the biggest spike since the FBI kept crime data. We had never had a 30% spike. This was countrywide. It wasn't blue or red states. Countrywide crime spike. I specifically remember, if you will, here in Buckhead wanting to annex itself because of the rise of crime. So I'm just kind of relating it because typically people consider that in conjunction with the economy. Well, I always say people don't consider it enough. So when the crime was going through the 30-year spike, people, I say, foolishly look to the presidency, foolishly look to what the laws are, and they've always followed the economics. So I'm not surprised, knowing that crime has always followed economics, that there was a 30% spike when we had a big crash, right? I'm not surprised that it spiked, but I'm also not surprised that it is starting to ease as the economy, believe it or not, despite what we're hearing, is actually going up. Job creation. Unemployment is still at 4%. That number was touted as the best number ever coming off the 2008 crash, right? We're seeing unemployment come all the way down. Like it lowered during, if you will, again, related to the administrations, it lowered during the Obama administration and continued to get down all the way to 3-something% under Trump, right? Again, I'm not trying to make this a political conversation. I'm just highlighting the differences that, and we're literally at 4% while watching the last 3 quarters job creation be the most it's been since 2014. So those are, I think, some of the biggest factors that we use domestically: job creation and unemployment. I know those are the numbers that looked at. I was shocked to see those numbers based on what I'm hearing in the media. So again, I think consistent. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, as long as money's being spent, then there's a demand for the jobs to fill those roles, because obviously the corporations or the companies need people to, supply the work. And so that being said, I can tell you one thing I've really seen just and one of the businesses, or one of my businesses that I actually participate in from day to day, which is the car wrap business. And what I'm seeing is a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. And what's happening is a lot of people are taking that savings, and there's actually a kind of an age group, and I would say between maybe 40, 45, people are feeling the inflation. And this is one of the effects inflation can actually have on people, where it makes you get off the pot, especially if you're a responsible person, and you can see it coming. And so what's happening is, a lot of the people who are comfortable with just one job and one income, they have savings, And what this inflation has shown them was they have to be assertive, and they're taking that assertion to go out and do things that they haven't done or have always wanted to do. So I'll give you an example. Just had this one lady I was talking to yesterday. she has a Italian icy business on the side, a truck, right? And so she decided, because she only had one truck, but she was like, look, the money's getting tighter. Everything's getting expensive. Let me go ahead and get 2 more trucks, right? Take some of my savings, invest in that from an entrepreneurial spirit place, right? So that I can create more opportunity for myself and make more money. So a lot of times going through this downturn or going through inflation, or what we would say downturn, not what you described. Obviously, that seems like we're doing pretty good. But what the perception is that we're going through a downturn. Money is harder to find. People are struggling. Jobs are rare. And obviously, things are more expensive. You have a lot of people who take that as an initiative to go out and do more work and work harder and spend more money. So for that lady to get those trucks done, guess what she's got to do? She's got to take her savings, right? And she's got to invest, which means she's going to pay us, right? Which means she has to pay for, and we have to pay to deliver it. So this is kind of what you're seeing, right? You're seeing this spirit of yes, when things get tight and they seem like gloom and doom, there's actually more people who are going to see that as a reason to take more action and not sit on their hands, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. And again, I'm not surprised you're giving an example from a business entrepreneur perspective.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, just again, in reference to what Colin Cowherd said, that people, but consumers themselves are even spending. But what it is let's put it in context.
Right.
What it is it didn't matter who the president was after the pandemic, once we kept okaying those bills to basically give free money to our economy, right? Mm-hmm. There were 3 different. Again, I always hated I hated the last 2, really the last one more than anything, like the idea of handing out money to us, if you will, as again, the money needed to be done initially to keep the economy going. I'm talking about those decisions in the White House, right, to say, hey, we're going to basically subsidize damn near our people, right? Like, that's literally what the country did for us. We had 3 different votes on it, and all 3 of them got approved, if you will. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, if you print money, this time was coming no matter who the president was, right? I'm talking about the inflation had to come once you pour in a bunch of free money.
Yeah.
Print a bunch of extra money.
Yeah.
And that's what we're currently experiencing, is that inflation was inevitable just from doing it. Like, there was no amount of policies by anyone that would have stopped that type of inflation with that type of money being input into the U.S. economy. And again, that's just putting that part in this perspective. Now, what's currently going on, because companies are going to try to take advantage of things. So I remember I saw this term, and we all know about it. Well, I never heard the term to the studying it right now, is shrinkflation. So we're seeing how the companies are shrinking their packages, still charging us the same price. So we're witnessing all these things saying, hey, this ain't cool. They're giving me less, for the same price per se. They're trying to trick me into I'm buying the same thing or whatever. So those things are going on to the point where now even the government is trying to watch corporations that are price fixing, right? They're challenging, the government's challenging them on this shrinkflation. So it's almost like the entrepreneur spirit of these companies saying, okay, let's take full advantage of these consumers spending all this money, because maybe there is a fear of a bigger downturn, even though, to your point, we perceptually believe we're in the middle of a downturn now, and that's just not factual. So again, I just kind of wanted to throw out, those last things. Go ahead, brother.
Well, I will say this is the negative. So that we kind of talked about I will say the negative that can happen in that is you kind of get into a spending mode and out of a savings mode. Mm-hmm. And so because you can think that things are too sweet, and you stop saving money for those rainy days or those times where you might need money, right? And those times, because things are expensive. And so what people aren't doing is they aren't saving as much because there's not as much money to save. Right. So there's less left after you pay the bills, you pay the expenses, you pay the rent, you pay the food, you pay the necessities. There's less money to save. So as you're spending those savings, If those savings aren't being utilized, kind of the example I gave before, if those savings aren't being utilized to make more money, right, you got to put those dollars to work.
Right. That's the risk.
Right? That's the risk. So if you're spending money just on frivolous things that aren't giving you the ROI, the return on that money being spent, and that is coming from your savings. And this is what a lot of people kind of are doing. They're in their savings right now. I would say just based on the inflation alone, because the cost of the necessities definitely are higher. Like you said, they're lower than they were at the height, but they're still higher. The rent is still $2,200, $2,500. The mortgage is still, $2,500, $3,000.
Right. Absolutely.
The gas is still at $4. The food is still $100 a bag, right? That being said, there's less money left. So the question is this a move to deplete people of the savings, and then we get caught, with our hands in the bag, and that could be detrimental for sure, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You get a turn down and people don't have 3 months of savings or 4 months savings like they used to have, and that's kind of what the credit cards are definitely going up. I don't know if you check that statistic.
Yeah. The interest rates, because John Hope Bryant, again, and I'm glad you're giving that context as well, right? Again, I was just talking about the numbers that I was surprised to find, if you will. Yes. But thank you for checking and bringing us back to reality of what people are still experiencing, which is money's harder to borrow because the interest rates are up. Like you said, all these things are cutting into your cost of living. So there is absolutely. So I don't want to act like everything's whoopee-doo. So I'm definitely not doing that. So thanks for that context. Yeah. And the other thing is what probably won't be coming back is people just having the ability to buy a house when we went through a 20, 30-year low on interest rates that John Hope Bryant talked about. The Feds have always kind of really wanted to bring the interest rates back to where we are now for years, but each administration didn't want to take the heat of getting us back and correcting us to where we were being. So we're seeing global growth because they've brought the interest rates back to, surprisingly, where they used to be when everybody used to be happy years ago. I remember even as a young man helping my mom redo her home loan when it was at 12% down to 9%. That was thought of as a good thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they were so high coming off the 70s and the 80s. So we're now really back to the correction where our government kind of has always wanted to be. Yeah. And so for the youngest generations, they will still eventually buy homes because this will be their normalized interest rates. But for those of us who have tried to save and retire based on the lower interest rates, that money is being eaten up. So again, I'm not trying to paint just a great picture here. All of that reality. With that said, let's make a quick switch into the phenomenon of Caitlin Clark. And I just want to get into the economics of it, not just her ability and how she's doing on the court. Again, this is business and finance for the culture, but just highlighting, I happened to look up an article that highlighted while at Iowa, she was an $82 million add to the economy of Iowa alone. That is a whole different phenomenon being added to now the WNBA as she's in the midst of her rookie season. But just any thoughts on just what she did at the collegiate level economically alone? That number is a wow to me. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's the Deion Sanders effect. I think Deion opened a lot including with the NIL, right? That whole deal going on where Deion showed people like that brand, that personal brand is everything, right? And it can really do some crazy stuff along with the lowering of the guard for collegiate guys to actually get paid, right, and monetize that at the collegiate level. Everything's just about eyeballs at the end of the day. I know a lot of these ladies are upset in the WNBA because, before Caitlin Clark came along, they weren't making this kind of money, but everything is relative to how much attention you get from your fan base and how much money is being spent and how many people are watching. And so Caitlin Clark, she's the great white hope. I mean, it is what it is. She's the great white hope, and the great white hope has always attracted more attention just because, and this is strictly my opinion, when people can do things outside of the norm, it's unique, right? And so what happens is, the norm, obviously in sports, right, is that African Americans and brown people are more athletic. They're better. So that's the norm. When you got a girl like Caitlin Clark, who obviously isn't, typical, she isn't unique in terms of what color she is, and she's out there balling out of control, that's a thing that brings a lot of attention. And in today's world, attention equates to dollars, right? It's what Deion did when he left Jackson State and went to Colorado. He got a lot of attention for that, and he was able to capitalize on the eyeballs, right? And that's what this thing is today. And so, Caitlin Clark, is she a great player? Absolutely, she's a great player. She brings the eyeballs and she performs, right? So you can't hate her for that. you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I definitely understand like the saltiness of being the best player in a league and not even coming close to the financial compensation that a rookie, so to speak, comes in and gets. It's very it can be upsetting, and I get it. I get it.
And this is gonna think, and if you just put it in real context, that's kind of always been the case to a degree. When leagues started to get a lot, when TV money started getting poured into all of these sports, and so even the NFL had to correct how big the rookie contract could get. That was something that they argued in the NFL because it was starting to be ridiculous for an unproven rookie to get paid way more than veterans, if you will. But when you have a new phenomenon and you're getting new eyeballs and more money that's being poured in that's ever been poured in, that's how you get a rookie with a $28 million shoe deal.
Exactly.
Like, Nike's not writing a $28 million check because they don't expect to make it all back plus tenfold. Yeah. Like literally, they're not writing a $28 million check for no reason. And this is not justifying or being behind. We're strictly talking about the economics of it, like just putting it in perspective. And I love that you gave the Deion example. I did a 5-minute swell podcast and I highlighted, to your point, when something looks a little different, to get into, again, the racial lines of it. It's no different than Tiger Woods becoming the phenomenon he became in golf, because it brings a new demographic. So think about it. Let's put this in context. Tiger Woods, when many of us watching golf, we're 12, 13% of the country, but that added 12% starting to watch, and plenty of other people too, not just black people, right? Added major eyeballs, and those players to a degree, we saw a little resentment or whatever. Even courses going as far as the Tiger proof, because they didn't want to see this black golfer, if you will, dominating the sport, but they couldn't change it, and everybody got the money. And so if we put it in that context, then I wanted her, for example, on the Olympic team to help all the sisters that has helped secure 7 straight Olympic gold medals that the public don't even know about.
Listen,
They're going for number 8. And the only reason I know it is because of the sister that was arguing with Stephen A. Smith saying they're going for number 8. She's like, that's the marketing. I'm like, no, I didn't know they had 7 straight until we was arguing about whether Caitlin should be on the team. That's how I know y'all got 7 straight. Like, that's how you put her on the team, everybody's gonna know they're going for 8 straight. One more person,
100%,
for not merit. And then it's not even that she's completely undeserving, but I'm not highlighting or acting like she deserves to be on there over one of those players. But it ain't the first time that we've made exceptions for phenomenons. And it ain't for me. This ain't about Caitlin Clark. It's about you ladies getting the eyes y'all deserve. I am a personal follower of some of these young ladies. I love women. I don't watch a lot of WNBA. I'm gonna keep it a buck, but I follow several sisters out of college into the WNBA, and I like them.
Yeah,
I want them to get their shine, and she helps.
Yes, and it's community. It's community. It's community. It's just the way it works, man. Your example with Tiger Woods was dead on, man. It's like the uniqueness, and that's both people watching you who want you to fail and people who want you to succeed, right? Yeah. The thing is,
Money Mayweather, he became the richest athlete in boxing,
right?
People, because they wanted to see him lose.
Yes,
that's Muhammad just the name of the game.
Floyd Mayweather effect. I mean, it's that's how it works. That's what human nature is. People want to see uniqueness. They want to see something a little different from time to time. And again, whether they want to see it fail, whether they're fans of it, or whether they hate it, they watch. And at the end of the day, attention is the currency, right? That's just what it is. The internet has really accented that and made that a reality. The more attention you can generate, whether it's positive or negative, unfortunately, right, it equates to dollar signs. And Caitlin Clark is a prime example, just like Tiger Woods in golf, right? It's not really about the race, right? It is about the race because that's what makes it unique, right? It's something different doing what's you know, but at the end of the day, it's really about the uniqueness, knowing that people are going to want to watch and see something different. And so I'm a fan of it because I think everybody's going to eat off of it, just like they did with Tiger Woods. Everybody ate. And after so long, right, it just became this thing where everybody wanted to see Tiger win and do good because it meant more money for everybody. Else.
The money went up crazy.
It went up crazy. Yeah.
And
even
that's
the TV, the TV time, golf was on prime time after Tiger came in. Who doesn't want that for the WNBA, right?
28 years, no charter flights.
Right.
That's the WNBA's history.
Right.
This one phenomenon, again, like her or not, that's the reality. And I want all those sisters to get their shine, and she helps with that.
Right.
And ultimately gets them more money, so they're not, if you will, having to rely on overseas money. Maybe it may come to that. I don't know, but
absolutely.
If they fully embrace, and again, I think the Olympics, because again, the Olympics only come every 4 years. So
yes.
Lisa Leslie said, I don't know how you leave the country without her on the team. I fully agree. And she's a dope player. Again, it's not me worshiping her.
Yeah.
I want all those sisters to get their shine. They're going for that 8th straight gold medal. Yes. I had no clue. Shame on us.
Yes.
But the reality is people didn't care.
Listen, her and Angel Reese were the collegiate version of Magic and Bird. Absolutely. Right? And people love that contrast. They love that contrast. That's older than that's the most, the historically, right, is Mike Tyson, and the biggest fight that Mike Tyson had in terms of revenue was the white guy named
Neely.
You don't even know his name. That's
Neely.
Neely. That's the irony. That's the irony, right? Mike Tyson's biggest purse, right? His biggest viewership was the contrast of a guy that most people can't even remember, because that's what the eyeballs want to see. It's very attractive. It's opposites attract, right? And it garners attention. And this is no different. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, I loved it when they got into the, because everybody was emotional about it, right? And everybody picked sides about it. And that's just what works in this environment that we live in. And from an economic standpoint, I know it's about economics, right? It's about economics. So that uniqueness, that differentiation, it's big in the marketplace. And if you can tap into that, right, you can make a lot of money. And essentially that money can help a lot of people is the idea, right? That's the idea. So we got to buy into that sometimes. We can't just think that it's all about us all the time.
Getting into the emotions of it when the economics make sense. And another perfect example of that uniques, as we talked about the Floyd Money Mayweather becoming the highest paid,
right?
What's his biggest purse? Conor McGregor, a guy from MMA, was his biggest purse. Not actually in the sport, who's valid, who deserves to make it. So many people watched. It was his biggest, both of them.
Right.
The most money they ever made.
Yeah. I think Conor basically quit fighting him in MMA, really, right? I think he lost maybe one more fight, but after the Floyd fight, he said, that was it. That was pretty much it. So
I think we covered that good, man. Hey, we missed Michael today again. We pop up live, so hopefully we'll catch up on the next one. But with that said, man, I think we had a good conversation, and
yes,
we'll
sir.
be out here.
Always.
Thank you for your time.
No doubt.
If there's anything you want to share with the public, let's get it out real quick, man. I got something I want to share, so I want to let you do it as well.
No, go ahead, man. I just want to say thank you guys for supporting this. I love the conversations. I think it's very important for us to have deep analytical conversations as an African American community, right? Really go deep. Think about community. Think is really important. And I think Montoya just always brings the hot topics and the good stuff to talk about to get different perspectives. And we can agree to disagree. That's a beautiful thing. That's how we learn, and that's how we get to what we to where we need to be. So that being said, thank you guys, and I can't wait to the next one.
Nah, sounds good. For anybody that sees this in the Atlanta area, June 21st through June 23rd, we have the Black Love Summer Tour. Go to mentaldialogue.com. We got the live experience on Friday. Then we got lunch and learn on Saturday. We're going to go bowling and then go support Jazz in the Alley up in Norcross. All three events are right next to each other, so come spend the whole day with us. And if you miss any of those events or would like to, you can basically, we cap off on Sunday at the Serial Lab, a Black-owned ice cream and cereal eatery. So dope little spot. We want to support them. So definitely go to mentaldialogue.com and participate in at least one out of our 5 events on the Black Love Summer Tour. All right, with that said, for the culture, we out this thing, baby.
We out. Peace.